Season 1 of The Outlaws opens with Randy Rakowski being caught for shoplifting. Randy is an academically gifted student who received a full scholarship to Oxford. It makes little sense at first until we learn that she is addicted to the rush of doing illegal things like stealing. We follow Randy to her court-ordered community service, where we are introduced to the other individuals who also receive community service after their arrest. We have Frank Sheldon, who is getting out of prison after a lifetime of crime. Frank is a grifter who has constantly abandoned his family over the years, but now he's forced to live with his daughter while he's under house arrest. Greg is a very tall lawyer who was caught with a prostitute a year after his wife left him. He's very awkward and has extremely low self-esteem. John Halloran is a middle-aged white man who leans right politically and often clashes with the left-leaning Myrna, an activist who founded the Bristol Justice Collective. Lady Gabby is literal royalty with over 1 million followers on her social media. She also has a nasty drug and alcohol problem. Lastly, we have Cristian Taylor, who Ronnie is instantly drawn to. Cristian has had a rough life because he has had to take care of his sister Esme because their mother is a drug addict. The quirky Diane Pemberley oversees the group. Given that she's not a real cop, she takes her job much too seriously. The story really begins to pick up when Malaki shows up at the community service building and gives Cristian a gun. The story is set in Bristol, and Malaki is the leader of the Brookhill Gang, which sells drugs and provides protection to groups associated with a man called the Dean. The Dean is a kingpin in the drug trade, who works out of London and never leaves the city. Malaki gives Cristian the gun because he wants him to steal the cell phone line from one of Dean's stash houses. While there, Cristian not only steals the mobile phone, he also steals 6 months worth of cash from the stash house and puts the cash in the ceiling at the community center. Ronnie ends up helping Cristian get away from the stash house after she steals her father's work van and causes a distraction for him, which allows him to escape. She does this because she's getting very close to Cristian and she likes the action. This ends up being a problem for Ronnie because the drug leaders take pictures of the van, which leads them back to her family home. Frank, Myrna, and John, while working at the community center, happen upon the money after it falls from the ceiling. Now they have a question before them. Do they take the money or do they turn it into the police? Eventually they decide to take the money, each for their own reasons. Frank uses the money to pay off his daughter's mortgage after contemplating leaving for Brazil after the ankle bracelet is removed. Myrna uses the money to help with funding for the Bristol Justice Collective. John puts the money into his family's struggling brake pad business because he wants to impress his overbearing father. Once they decide to keep the money, they need to wash it. The three blackmail Greg, a lawyer by trade, into washing the money for them through his work with Lady Gabby. Greg uses Lady Gabby as a front to launder money to Laco Logistical Services, a shell company invented by Greg. This might make you think that Greg is a terrible person, but in reality he's probably the nicest guy in the show. Both the police and Malaki get their hands on some CCTV footage of Cristian robbing the stash house, and they both realize that someone in the van seemed to be helping Cristian. Malaki confronts Cristian about the stolen money because Malaki just wanted him to steal the cell phone at the stash house. The fact that Cristian stole the money is a problem for Malaki because he's providing protection for the Dean's operation, and the Dean wants someone's head for what happened. Because of this, Cristian goes back to the community center to get the money and run with his sister. When he's there, he realizes the money's gone. Cristian knows that someone in the group stole the money, and he focuses on John, threatening him at gunpoint to give him the money or else. This same weapon was taken from Malaki's home by Esme, and she shot one of Malaki's men named Smiler. After threatening John, Cristian hides the gun in the community center bathroom, but Diane finds it. She gives the gun to Sergeant Haynes and Selfworth, who run the ballistics on the bullet that shot Smiler, and they realize it's the same gun. This forces Esme and Cristian into hiding. Ronnie feels guilty because she's the one who told Diane that the gun she found in the bathroom belonged to Cristian. Out of a sense of guilt and a sense of wanting to help Cristian, she asks the community service group if they can help find Cristian. Lady Gabby, Greg, Frank, and Myrna, as well as John, agree to help. At this point, the police reveal to the community service group that Malaki is really Cristian Taylor, and the person they've known as Cristian is really named Ben. Cristian received community service and he forced Ben to carry it out for him, because Ben needed money. The group is able to track where Cristian is, because they played a game of what would their porn name be while at the community center one day. Your porn name is your first pet and the street you grew up on, and Ben's name was Fluffy Lambsbottom. The group finds Ben and Esme in an abandoned warehouse off of Lambsbottom Street. The real Cristian tracks down Ben at the community center and he wants to take him back to the Dean, but all the community members stand in a line and refuse to move. Cristian ends up leaving empty-handed, and when the police show up, they aren't able to press charges on Ben for the gun, because Ronnie informs them that she originally told Diane out of revenge because Ben rejected her. Season 2 of The Outlaws begins with Ben explaining to Esme that Randy is going to be living with them now, because Randy doesn't want to go to Oxford anymore and she's left her family home. John is informed by his father that they are selling a stake in the company to Hilgard, and John is being fired from the family business because he's out of his depth. John's father has always treated him like garbage and bullied him his entire life, and he tells his son it's not personal, it's just business. John is crushed by this news. Greg has a love interest at work named Anne-Marie. He is also working closely with Lady Gabby, and he notices a lot of people are hanging out with her and taking advantage of her. When he mentions this to her, she fires him out of anger. Gabby is confronted with the fact that her father has financially cut her off. When she asks her friends if they'll let her stay with them, none of them step up, and she's forced to stay with Greg because he is the only person that allows her. One of Cristian's men sells him out to the dean and tells him who stole the dean's money. The dean is going to kill one of Ben, Cristian, or Ronnie, before Ronnie says they will pay him back in full. The Bristol cops are just becoming aware of who the dean is because of the activities which occurred in the first season. He's known to the London cops, but he's very elusive. Scotland Yard has an ongoing investigation into him. Because the real Cristian Taylor violated his parole, he is being sent to prison. A community service group including Ronnie, Ben, Frank, John, and Myrna agree to run Cristian's drug business to pay the dean back because he's threatening not only them but their loved ones as well. They convince Greg to get on board to launder the money after Frank gets Spencer to give him the blackmail documents he's been holding over Greg's head at work. They only have 8 weeks to pay the dean back before he takes it out on everyone's loved ones. Before going to prison, Cristian gives Ronnie a cell phone line, and he tells her how to run his business. Cristian's operation is small, so the group decides that it needs to expand. They do this by getting information from the club that Ben works at, student information from local universities, as well as a mailing list from Myrna's BJC. The group uses the idea of coffee as code to order drugs, and it begins contacting people, and their requests pour in. They pour in to the point that the group can't handle the volume, and they hire new runners, including an individual named Tyler, who's over 18, which they normally don't do because he can be tried as an adult. The group is on track to pay the dean back. They are washing the money at casinos and then laundering it through Greg's law firm. Ben and Ronnie are getting very close and they sleep together. Ben asks Ronnie to go to the beach in Weston with him, and he shows her a food shack that he wants to buy and start his own restaurant with her. Ronnie doesn't really seem into this idea, but she still asks her parents for a loan to help them get started. Meanwhile, Spencer orders some drugs from the group, and Tyler delivers them. He takes the opportunity to rob Spencer, and Spencer reports this to the police, who promptly arrest Tyler. The police realize that if they can get Tyler to flip on the people running Cristian's organization, they can also potentially get the dean. Just as Tyler is about to reveal who he works for, Greg runs in to represent him. While this is happening, Ben and Ronnie go to Spencer's home, and they threaten him until he agrees to drop the charges, which he does. This saves them momentarily, but the police are closing in. The group needs more ways to launder money, so they begin taking donations for the community center, and they use this as another way to launder money. They are getting close to paying the dean off at this point, and they have 4 weeks left. The group now has a different problem. They've sold so much product that they need to make more. They hire 2 people to help make them product, and John tries some of it because he's in a state of despair at the moment after being fired by this father and being unable to find a job. Finally, the group has made enough money to pay back the dean, but they run into an issue. They have 1 day left to make the final £10,000 payment, but Gabby learns that her account is being used for money laundering purposes. She learns this information after Claire, a person who works at the BJC, calls her about her £100,000 donation, which Gabby has no idea about, and she didn't make it. Gabby puts a hold on all payments at the law firm, which puts the group in jeopardy because this puts them short with the dean. After learning that Claire did this, Myrna asks Frank to help her get her fired, and he takes her credit card and buys a £500 dinner for him and his family. This causes Myrna a lot of guilt because after firing Claire, she sees the police officer in her home again. Eventually, Greg talks to Gabby, and she isn't mad that they are using her to launder money. She's mad the group left her out of it. She releases the payment hold, and the final payment goes to the dean. This, however, doesn't end things with the dean, who says they're not done until he says they're done. He tells Ronnie and Ben that he's giving them 10 more kilos of product, and they have to sell it and launder it for him. The group now realizes that they need to get the dean off their backs, or this is never going to end. Frank proposes to the group that they use the brass bunkum, which involves a gun, and he hides it at his home. His daughter finds it, and he honestly tells her what has been going on from the beginning and where all the money came from. She tells him that when he's done with this, he's going to have to leave her home, which kills Frank, because he's actually wants to stay at this point, and he's really changed. One day, Dean receives a phone call from Cristian asking him who the American is that Dean's been doing business with. and Dean doesn't know an American. He doesn't know who he's talking about, so he discusses this with Ben and Ranny to set up a meeting with the American that they have been dealing with. The American is really Frank, pretending to be a gangster named Ralphie Rostelli from New York. When the Dean sits down with Frank, the Dean agrees to buy 10 kilos from him for 400,000 pounds on 2 conditions. Ranny and Ben are out because he doesn't work with kids, and the Dean must meet him in Bristol to finalize the deal. The Dean agrees to meet them at the Park Street Hotel in Bristol. When the Dean is in transit, Cristian signs an immunity deal with the police and reveals to them that the Dean is going to buy 10 kilos today. The police rush to the scene and stake it out. When the Dean arrives, Frank proposes they move the meeting to another place. Because the operation Hallerman and Sons, which they are using as a front, is getting nervous, they meet at the community center, which is having an opening day party. The Dean exchanges the money for the drugs, but doesn't want to carry them back in the car with him to London. When the deal is going down, Ben and Ronnie appear with a gun, and they steal the money, or at least that's what they want the Dean to think. But really they take the box of drugs, and then they have Gabby distract the Dean, and Myrna puts the drugs in the boot of the car when he's not paying attention. The police are looking for Dean's vehicle, and when they see it, they pull him over, and there's 10 kilos in the boot of his car. Season 2 wraps up with Frank leaving his daughter's home because she asked him to, and with Greg quitting his job and asking his coworker out, who at this point he's been unable to. Also, John sues his father for wrongful termination and workplace bullying, telling him it's not personal, it's just business. And Myrna giving up control of the BJC to Claire. After she does this, the guilt washes away and she stops seeing the police officer in her home. Lady Gabby joins a treatment group for addiction, and Diane gets a promotion to be a police community support officer. Finally, Randy gives Cristian back his line when he gets out of prison. However, when her and Ben are on their way to Weston, on the train she realizes she doesn't want to do this, and she stands on the platform outside where Ben can see her as the train pulls away. Then she steals a car because she's clearly drawn to the action of crime. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.